Urgent, a fatal blow. From Budanov is a sentence for Russians. In Donbas, the end of the war on Kyiv's terms is signed. The head of the OP made a statement that made everyone in the Kremlin's knees shake. Budanov announced the final stage. The territories will be returned. It happened! Putin is being sold out by his own dogs. The leader's head will be sacrificed. Security forces and elites have united behind the dictator's back. A coup in the Kremlin has already begun. Here is who will strike the decisive blow and what the plan for the bloody liquidation of the regime from within looks like. Shock, shots in Washington, an assassination attempt on the president live on air. America is drowning in blood and chaos. The Senate has reached a boiling point. Impeachment is already inevitable. Putin is losing Transnistria. Chisinau and Tiraspol sat down at one table. Moscow was pointedly shown the door. Kyiv and Chisinau have moved to decisive action. All this and more in our broadcast. Hotspot. Sensation! Budanov revealed his cards. A final blow to Donbas is being prepared. This will change everything. The OP's head made a statement that made Putin's hands shake. Is Kyiv really planning a fatal move about the territories? New surprises are already on the way. What nightmare awaits Moscow tomorrow? Watch. Is there already a decision on Donbas? And how could we go without a special surprise for the Russians? Kirill Budanov took part in the Kyiv Security Forum and made a number of interesting statements.
And no other option exists. Everything else will simply lead us to a catastrophe.
Ukraine's position regarding red lines also remains unchanged. Despite absurd statements and pressure from the Kremlin, territorial concessions are out of the question.
The red line is simple. I think everyone understands it. First, we recognize nothing. It won't happen, no matter who tries what. And it won't just happen. Don't even dream of it.
And the main question, what about the decisions on Donbas?
Regarding Donbas, we will find, I'm sure, a solution that will primarily satisfy us because it's our land, and no one has the right to trade land. It won't happen.
On one hand, there are strictly defined red lines and the exclusion of territorial concessions. On the other, a statement that a solution for Donbas will still be found.
Ukraine's position is that the end of the war should be along the line of contact. That is, there's no talk of any territorial concessions at the moment of full control over the territories of the Donetsk region. If the head of the office makes such statements, it means that the position of the Ukrainian side has been conveyed to both American and Russian partners.
And an equally important topic is negotiations. Budanov states that work in this direction continues, but without any details.
We try to do our job, I believe in it. That's all I'll tell you. The negotiation process in any case. All its more or less sensitive aspects cannot be disclosed.
But if the process is ongoing but without public statements, what state is it in now, at this moment?
Budanov's statement that there is significant progress in the Donbas and about the possibility of another prisoner exchange indicates that negotiators are working across all subgroups, including the political, economic, and military components, as well as the humanitarian one.
Earlier, the head of the president's office also stated that the negotiation process with Russia would not take much time, as everyone understands that the war must come to an end.
We are talking about elements of military coercion of the Russian Federation by Ukraine. The defense forces of Ukraine and the intelligence community, represented by the main intelligence directorate and special operations forces, have dealt significant blows to the Russian economy, specifically targeting its ability to fill the treasury through oil and petroleum product sales.
And of course, we can't forget the technological breakthrough and that very surprise for the Russians.
Everyone has seen the use of Russian models here, where they already identify targets themselves, maneuver, and so on. This is the future. We are not lagging behind here, as they say. We have our own developments as well. But we need to scale up these technologies.
It seems a new stage of the war is very close now. And it's not about a drone war, but about a complete transition to artificial intelligence.
Well, we'll leave this surprise for the Russians, letting the Russian side figure out the mystery of the scaling for themselves. For the Russians, the surprise was that the Ukrainian side has the capability to strike Russian territory using fixed-wing drones, which in terms of their numbers, referring to the strikes, exceed the capabilities of the Russian side.
A separate area of focus is strikes on Russian territory. Ukrainian sanctions aren't just about weakening Russia's oil economy, which is also suffering quite significant losses.
The total losses for the Russian side, according to estimates by Russian economists themselves, due to Ukrainian drone strikes on the occupiers' territory, amount to about $100 billion.
And there's even something else just as important.
Russia is taking a hit to its image. That is the most important thing. Our oil sanctions, as they say, will end one day. When the war ends, because it will happen eventually. But the blow to their image will last for a very long time, because it calls into question Russia's status as a reliable supplier, as a reliable partner that can deliver its raw materials to the destination on time. There are huge problems with this.
Well, yes, and Putin's own image is also fading, at least among his own citizens. Just look at Tuapse, where, according to the authorities, everything is under control.
This is just really, honestly insane, you know?
Ukraine continues to live and fight without stopping its development, but only improving and modernizing its defense capabilities and technologies. But at the same time, some things remain unchanged, such as the red lines and Kyiv's positions, despite the manipulations from the Kremlin. Kremlin coup. A knife was held to Putin's throat. Security forces and elites have united to eliminate the dictator. The countdown has begun. A deadly conspiracy has ripened in the very heart of Moscow. Those who served the regime faithfully for years are now preparing its bloody finale. Watch the shocking details of the impending crackdown right now.
In Russia, preparations for a coup d'etat are in full swing.
Actually, Putin wanted some action. Well, now he's got some action.
As recent polls show across the border, ordinary residents of the Russian Federation are tired of the war unleashed by Putin, as well as of the bloody dwarf himself and his tyranny.
Life has been turned upside down, and of course people see and feel it. 77% of those surveyed have, in one way or another, experienced mobile internet outages in their city, and that was an integral part of life. 67% experienced the blocking of messaging apps. We've already mentioned it. Among those aged 18 to 50, this figure is certainly over 80%. Blocking WhatsApp and Telegram is the most acute problem related to the war. 47% cite restrictions on online services as the most painful limitations related to the SVO. Now, every second person complains about shelling and drone attacks.
Recently, even the Russian elites have started complaining about the Tsar father, who traditionally enriched themselves precisely at the Kremlin's expense. Even they can no longer bear Putin's antics.
There is an opinion out there that, for many of them, that particular decision of Putin's was honestly quite a shock. And they would probably have preferred, out of self-interest, not out of some moral, principled, or other interests they generally have, long had issues with their inner selves, their souls are likely long gone, or maybe they never had them. Out of self-interest, because then there wouldn't have been such harsh sanctions against them specifically.
Following that, the so-called turbo patriots of Russia also began to express their mass dissatisfaction with the regime. The latter, in the 5th year of the full-scale war, have become completely disillusioned with Putin and his ideas of the Russian world.
This is causing hysteria even among the Z patriotic public. Take Anastasia Kashevarova, for instance, who loves to speak the truth and again tell it like it is. She says that today there are idiotic decisions and tomorrow we're pulling the bodies of women and children from the ruins. Quite right.
Russian celebrities are no longer staying silent either. After the stunning success of Victoria Bonya's video message, many bloggers, actors, and musicians have begun to publicly express their dissatisfaction with Putin.
Well, let's be honest. We have a man, Putin, who's been in power for 26 years. If the truth is not told for many years, for decades, it is not a mistake. It is a system. There's an old formula. The Tsar is good, the boyars are bad. It's time for us to outgrow it.
Moreover, everyone from young to old has started inciting the public to an all-Russian revolt. A trend of recording provocative video messages to the authorities has swept across the country.
Today, I would also like to make an appeal, but not to Putin, but to those who have started speaking out, who have started highlighting the problems that are happening in our country today. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the first step, for doing it not just with words, but with actions, because today words equal actions, and there can be real consequences for that. So, you risked your comfort in order to help people, in order to bring information to them.
Putin's main support in Russia, the security forces and the army, has also turned away from him. Generals no longer hide that they are putting on the bunker dweller's desk. Fake reports about the situation at the front so as not to anger the dictator once again. As a result, instead of winding down the special military operation, Butler firmly believes that everything is going according to plan. Only this plan turns out to be utopian.
Yes, of course, all this still builds up risks for him. Gradually.
And soon, the all-Russian dissatisfaction with Putin will indeed spill over into a nationwide revolt, analysts say. Moreover, everyone will support it, from teachers and factory workers to big business, the Russian elites and the regular army.
Shock, blood in Washington, screams, bullets. Americans have judged their president. The country is on the edge of civil war. Dissatisfaction has boiled over. The Senate is preparing for a crushing blow. In the corridors, they are already whispering about impeachment. Are Trump's days in the White House numbered? Watch.
Lightning doesn't strike the same place 3 times. A new assassination attempt on Donald Trump has not raised his fading approval rating and has not particularly worried the United States. It's known that the fire was opened yesterday by a 31-year-old teacher from California, Cole Thomas Allen. He was armed with a shotgun and tried to break into the hall where Trump was already present. The perpetrator managed to shoot a Secret Service agent, after which he was seized and detained. None of the representatives of the American administration were injured. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were promptly evacuated from the hall to a safe location. The wounded officer is also doing fine. He was wearing a bulletproof vest.
The suspect carried out an attack on a Secret Service post. He also had a pistol and several knives with him. The shooter was not injured and was taken to the hospital for an examination.
However, the very fact of the attack speaks volumes, analysts say. In recent months, the American president's rating has been falling rapidly, primarily due to an overly absurd foreign and domestic policy.
When they conduct public opinion polls, the polls already show that 55% of Americans support the idea of Trump's impeachment. But there will be no impeachment until his base comes to understand that Trump is absolutely not what they need. But they have never been as close to this understanding as they are now.
Frankly speaking, Trump himself is helping to reach this understanding as much as he can. Constantly changing opinions, failure to keep promises, or conversely, overly aggressive actions do not please Americans. One of the recent examples is the murder of 2 citizens who were against the White House's migration policy.
So they were killed. They killed. Some conservatives have distanced themselves from the Republican Party. They were centrists. But they say, no, not for this Republican Party, and they are too radical. We don't want to vote for them. Next, Catholics who make up 23% of the electorate, by the way. Also, and then Donald Trump starts quarreling with the Pope, posts himself as Jesus, and on top of that, J.D. Vance says that the Pope should focus on moral issues rather than commenting on politics.
The war in Iran, attempts to annex Greenland, the meeting with Putin, disregard for Canada. This is far from a complete list of Trump's failures over the past year.
All of this accumulates as Trump's losses, and he's losing negotiations, Trump. Trump started the war. All of this is like boom, 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 boom. And what Trump hates most is when he's held responsible for something. So here he will. We've already heard that he shouted at Witkoff that, as it turns out, Witkoff is conveying information incorrectly. He misinformed Trump about something.
At the same time, in a country of, as they used to say, advanced capitalism, the average person is used to judging the government's success not by TV propaganda, but by their own wallet. And lately, Trump has had nothing to brag about.
First and foremost, gas prices, and then everything else. So the picture is very bleak.
Trump's opponents in Congress see this picture too. Analysts believe the Democrats' strategy today will be to stall Trump's ideas, the main one being to double the country's military budget.
Democrats will always be happy to do everything they can right now to put a spoke in Trump's wheels. And if that means impeachment or denying him money, it turns out that when a president is unpopular, even members of his own party start asking, do we really need this?
Lately, there's been a lot of complaining about the American leader's age. This summer, he'll be entering his 80s. The confusion in his statements is also partly attributed to his age. What the president says within a single day often contradicts itself.
He's sort of retreated into his own reality where, negotiations are going great. But there's another reality, a different situation that not only we have ended up in, but Iran has also found itself in alongside us as well. Because now at this point, we actually trust what Iran says more than we trust what our own president says, which is a remarkable shift.
Analysts believe all this suggests that Trump won't finish his term in the presidential chair. J.D. Vance is considered the most likely candidate to take his place. By the way, today's video of the shooter's attack supports this theory. For some reason, the Secret Service rushed to save Vance first, and only then ran to Trump, dropping the elderly president in the process.
Disaster in the death ring. Kyiv and Chisinau have begun a total cleanup of the enclave. The Kremlin has panicked and declared an alert. Shoigu is in horror. This is the end. The countdown has begun. Ukraine and Moldova have moved to decisive action. Shocking details next.
We will protect by all possible and impossible methods. The Kremlin is again threatening Moldova over a fictional violation of the rights of residents of unrecognized Transnistria.
We must not forget that more than 220,000 Russian citizens live in Transnistria. Their interests and safety are now under threat due to the ill-conceived and irresponsible actions of Kyiv and Chisinau. If such a need arises, Russia will take all necessary measures and use all available methods for their protection in accordance with the Constitution.
Hurling threats. The Kremlin's reindeer herder Sergei Shoigu amid the resumption of talks between Chisinau and Tiraspol. No progress was achieved between Moldova and unrecognized Transnistria at the April 16th meeting. But these talks clearly indicate a desire to reach an agreement. And most importantly, without Russia. The meeting took place in a 1+1 format. And these are already the second such talks in 2026.
They now have perhaps the best opportunity in the near future. Well, if not to finally resolve the issue with the Transnistrian Russian enclave, then at the very least to begin the gradual and careful process of its soft reintegration back into Moldova, all while steadily working to reduce and limit the ongoing influence that Russia currently holds in the region.
On the same day, Moldova makes an important decision. Chisinau declares the leadership of Russian troops in Transnistria persona non grata. If they attempt to cross into territory controlled by Moldova, they'll be deported to their country of origin, Russia, with a permanent re-entry ban.
These individuals have been declared undesirable on the territory of the Republic of Moldova. And the reason is very simple and specific. The Russian army is illegally present on the territory of the Republic of Moldova. That is exactly what we said. We made up our minds and took this decision to declare them undesirable.
And after that, hysteria broke out in the Kremlin. Shoigu himself is shouting that Moldova, with EU support, is trying to push the Russian task force out of Transnistria. It's truly a mystery why Moldova would want to push Russian occupiers out of its own country. And this Transnistrian hysteria in Russia is exacerbated by the Russian Federation's failure on other fronts.
Orban's authoritarian regime in Hungary has fallen, which was very actively supported by the Russians, and even more so, well, accompanied by Russian intelligence. In Ukraine, the Russian army is bogged down and cannot achieve its goals. Moreover, they have shown their weakness to the entire world. They have lost zones of geopolitical influence, essentially already in the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa. And from this helplessness, the agony begins. And they try to comment on at least something, imitating, let's say, some kind of strong position as before.
The Kremlin's outcries are understandable. Russia, according to the head of the Ukrainian president's office, Kirill Budanov, is afraid for its soldiers in Transnistria.
All Russians are afraid for their contingent and want to take at least some measures to, well, somehow reinforce it.
But there are almost no opportunities for reinforcement. Chisinau's bans and restrictions don't just complicate, but block the rotation of Russian troops. With such small but confident steps, Moldova seems to be following one of the main points of the Transnistria reintegration plan, demilitarization of the region.
Russia can intimidate, Russia can raise the stakes. Russia can shout loudly within the framework of the negotiation process inside Moldova itself. Russia can try to assert through force, let's say, its interest in Transnistria. But as of now, any tools or means for providing real, tangible, and substantial physical military support, even for its own contingent, meaning its military base that is located there, are simply not clearly evident at this particular point in time.
But this is not the Kremlin's only problem in Transnistria. Through the fingers of the RF, support from that small portion of loyal residents is also slipping away. After all, the Kremlin has abandoned the people it threatens to protect. Due to a lack of resources, sanctions, and the absence of a shared border, the Kremlin has cut support for the region, even energy support. Even though there was so much talk.
Right now, we are primarily concerned with the supply of electricity to Transnistria.
Moldova understands the sensitivity of the issue well and, together with the European Union, has already begun to act as saviors, allocating tens of millions of euros to maintain the region's gas supply.
The only thing they can count on, well, is only the activation of their internal reserves. And they can only be activated through, well, a total buyout. That is, a huge amount of money needs to be spent on this. There has long been no ideological basis there anymore, of course.
But there is no money either, as the Russian classics say. In the conditions of this perfect storm, the territory cut off by Russia is drawing closer to Moldova. Although just 2 years ago, the Kremlin considered this impossible.
Rumor has it, and you have probably already heard about it, that this particular entity simply needs to be suppressed by military means, and let Russia then suffer yet another strategic defeat. But they still have absolutely no prospects whatsoever.
But the louder the threats sound, the more obvious it is that the Kremlin is losing what it tried to hold on to for years.
The world is on the brink of World War III. Shoigu has declared war on NATO. The countdown to the invasion has begun. Sweden is waiting for a paratrooper landing. The Baltics will become a bloody trap. Who will be the first victim in the dictator's mad game? Shocking details of the upcoming clash. Watch right now.
Russians continue to be hysterical and threaten war against the Baltic and Scandinavian countries. This time, Putin's friend, the former defense minister exiled to the RF Security Council, Sergei Shoigu, responded with statements. The one who carried out the order to start the bloodiest war in Europe in the last 80 years recalled the UN Charter and the right of a member state to self-defense.
Recently, there have been more frequent cases where Ukrainian drone strikes on Russia are carried out through Finland and the Baltic states. This can happen in two cases: the ineffectiveness of Western air defense systems or the deliberate provision of their airspace by these states. In the latter case, according to international law, Article 51 of the UN Charter on the inherent right of states to self-defense in the event of an armed attack comes into force.
The topic of a potential Russian attack on the Baltic states and Finland is constantly fueled by Russian propagandists and war patriots.
Special warning?
Special warning.
Yes. Well, in Estonia, they say they haven't received it yet.
They became particularly active in their threats after several cases of drones falling in Lithuania and Latvia, where the authorities stated that the UAVs were Ukrainian. The Russians took advantage of the situation and began to rock the boat in every way possible. A map of the flight path of the drones that bombed Ust-Luga and Primorsk even appeared on propaganda resources. However, this fake was exposed by the Russian pilot blogger Fighter Bomber. The Kremlin scribblers didn't stop there and rolled out another map allegedly showing Ukrainian UAVs launched from Finland at the Olenia base. This entire escalation campaign was accompanied by Solovyov's shouting,
"The Baltic states specifically allow Ukrainian weapons that are manufactured abroad to pass through their national airspace. Today is the day we must take out the Baltic states because they are hitting the port and terminals of Ust-Luga. The Balts must truly feel and experience for themselves the full and unrelenting wrath of the Russian people."
In an attempt to stabilize the situation, the foreign ministers of Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia published a joint statement on the Estonian MFA website. A country preparing for war with Russia, in which it intends to hold out for at least 30 days under a total blockade.
We, the foreign ministers of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, categorically reject the ongoing disinformation campaign in Russia, which is completely groundless. The Baltic states have never allowed their territory or airspace to be used for drone strikes against targets in Russia.
The diplomats reminded the Russians that they are, in fact, the aggressor. And instead of looking for a new point of instability and confrontation in the world, they should just get out of Ukraine. In the Russian Security Council, such unity among the Baltic states was clearly not to their liking.
The Russians are psychologically trying to intimidate the Baltic states into reducing their support for Ukraine, otherwise threatening a direct military invasion, which aligns with numerous reports in the world media, as well as Trump's claims that he won't help NATO countries if they are attacked. So, in reality, all the accusations from Russia are absolutely and entirely groundless. There's no direct proof, but Russia is once again trying to pressure its neighbors, using the war in Ukraine as leverage.
Meanwhile, Sweden's military chief is certain that to provoke and rattle NATO, the Russians don't even need to seize the notorious pro-Russian city of Narva. Just one of the 400,000 islands in the Baltic Sea would suffice. Destabilizing even a tiny patch of land under alliance guarantees could either lead to a new war or shatter the unity so firmly declared by partners since World War II.
Europe has become a forge of death for the Russian Federation. Putin is furious. Zelensky's secret plan has nullified all the Kremlin's hopes. Dozens of the EU's largest factories are now officially working for a Ukrainian victory. The Kremlin is terrified. They missed how Europe turned into a massive rear-line factory for Ukraine. Kyiv has made a master move. Watch for the details.
Europe wants to survive, and it won't succeed without Ukraine. On Tuesday, April 14th, Ukraine and Germany signed a defense data sharing agreement with partners involving several joint projects. Under this memorandum, combat data will be used to analyze the performance of German missile systems. This will help increase their effectiveness and refine tactics. Meanwhile, Ukraine shares unique battlefield data with partners to train and improve AI models and analytical solutions. Furthermore, Germany will send a new military aid package to Ukraine. At the same time, Norway is also getting involved. Ukraine and Norway have signed a declaration on defense partnership. The countries will take steps to foster closer cooperation between their respective defense industries, with the goal of developing new technologies and increasing production volumes. And it is precisely with Ukraine's help that Europe is strengthening its defense.
Because today, Ukraine, through its example, its participation, and by countering Russian aggression, Ukraine has shown Europe that the continent, the European Union, and even the European component of NATO itself truly needs its own dedicated and resilient security framework to help withstand such threats, both the Russian Federation and quite possibly any other form of aggression in general. So today, in my view, Europeans have, for the most part, largely realized that building a new and effective security model, even on a truly global scale, is simply impossible without Europe. And as a result, Europe itself cannot achieve this without the essential involvement of Ukraine.
Experts are convinced that the Ukrainian army is now the most combat-ready on the European continent. After so many years of war, especially this active phase of the Russo-Ukrainian War, this could form the very foundation of Europe's security architecture.
The signing of agreements with Norway and Germany is yet more proof of this. And not just declarations, but these are concrete action plans filled with practical meaning. What, who, and will do, right? Actually, this is exactly production. This is strengthening defense capabilities.
Moreover, about a dozen European Union factories have taken up the manufacture of Ukrainian weapons. Under the Build with Ukraine initiative, our defense companies have already established 11 joint ventures with foreign manufacturers. Everything that Ukrainian and foreign gunsmiths produce together will go to the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine, while Europe covers most of the financial costs. In this way, it also invests in its own security.
In Ukraine, I'm saying that Ukraine in this security system, it is a core state with a combat-ready army, the best army in the world, with technical and weapon developments, with the prospect of developing various technologies that will be used, are already being used, and will be used in the near future during combat operations. And Europe's help, in my view, is not that it won't be getting any smaller. It will be increasing. Ukraine has something to offer for Europe's security.
But the question is there a benefit for Ukraine itself in such a case? After all, Europe is building security at Kyiv's expense. But at the same time, Ukraine is not yet expected in NATO. It turns out there is, and a big one.
What does Ukraine get? Ukraine receives status as a global actor. Ukraine receives financial support, probably one of the largest in the world today, if not receiving the very largest, right? And this is an opportunity to develop our technologies, to strengthen our security. Yes, actually, this is the protection of Ukraine, first and foremost. We ourselves, with our own hands, with the help of Europeans, are building the defense of our state for every Ukrainian man and woman. So the benefits here are obvious.
Putin's demilitarization has failed. The Kremlin dictator was so afraid of NATO expansion that he now gets an even stronger and better prepared Ukraine next door. And now it's not Western missiles that should be feared, but missiles of Ukrainian production. That's all for now. Well, for more other fiery news from the front, watch in the next episode.